Hello, I'm Dr. Eva Cheuk-Yin Lee. I'm a lecturer in the Sociology Department at Lancaster University. In this video, I will talk about the Hongkongers in the UK. Hongkongers form the largest group of migrants to arrive in the UK after Brexit, as of the making of this video in mid-2024, and is very likely to remain so, given the hostile environment in the UK. By mid-2023, over 150,000 Hongkongers had entered the UK on the BNO visa, which the British government launched in January 2021. The history of Hongkongers' citizenship status in relation to British colonialism and more about this visa route will be elaborated in this video. This video has two aims. First, to briefly introduce the recent history of Hongkongers emigrating to the UK. Second, to illustrate the diversity of the British ESEA community with attention to the sensitivity of geopolitics and how it may shape solidarity and community. I will first explain the historical colonial relationship between Britain and Hong Kong and outline the recent geopolitical developments affecting Hong Kongers' migration to the UK. Then, I will discuss how this new Hong Kongers community in the UK relates to other groups in the British ESEA community and other migrants groups. Please note that this video presents the arguments and findings of existing research only. The views and stances presented here reflect those of the respective authors of the reference source. For further information, please refer to the list of reference at the end of the video. Hong Kong became a British colony in 1842 under the Treaty of Nanking after the Manchu Qing dynasty's defeat in the Opium War. Technically speaking, the name Hong Kong, meaning fragrant harbour, originally referred only to the Hong Kong island. Subsequent treaties and leases extend the name Hong Kong to include the Kowloon Peninsula, the New Territories, and outlying islands. In particular, the New Territories was leased to Britain for 99 years. Approaching the end of the 99-year lease of the New Territories, the governments of the UK and People's Republic of China, the PRC, engaged in talks to discuss the future of Hong Kong. The Sino-British Joint Declaration, signed in 1984, resulted from those negotiations. The Joint Declaration remains a legally binding document registered with the United Nations by both the British and PRC governments, although the PRC government unilaterally declared the Joint Declaration a historical document without practical significance back in 2017. The Joint Declaration stipulated the arrangements for Hong Kong's transfer of sovereignty from the 1st of July 1997. A special administrative region would be set up under the arrangement, which is commonly summarized as one country, two systems, meaning that Hong Kong would enjoy a high degree of autonomy with its legal, social, and economic systems, as well as lifestyle unchanged for 50 years from 1997 until 2047. The PRC would only have authority over defense and foreign affairs. The story of Hong Kong and the recent wave of emigration to the UK reflect the lasting impacts of British colonialism until today. Although Hong Kongers have arrived in the UK in large numbers in the last few years, emigration patterns in Hong Kong since the 1980s have always been related to the city's future. In the late 1980s, following the signing of the Sino-British Joint Declaration and the Tiananmen Massacre on June 4, 1989, the outflow of people reached around 1% of the population. By 1990, it had reached 62,000. Many of those outflows were highly skilled, managerial, and professional workers. Given the long history of Hong Kongers' migration, it's safe to say that Hong Kongers in the UK form a diverse community. There are hundreds of thousands who have arrived since the launch of the BNO visa scheme in 2021, but there are also many who have been arriving in the UK since the 1980s. Before going into the details about the Hong Kongers community in the UK, it's important to talk about Hong Kong identity historically before we can actually talk about the formation of the UK Hong Kong community, which is distinctive from the pan-ethnic Chinese community. The Hong Kong identity is a recurrent theme in discussions about the recent history of Hong Kong. Scholars from fields such as sociology, anthropology, history, media, and communication studies have extensively explored this topic. Most post-war Hongkongers are refugees from China, fleeing the Chinese Civil War and subsequent political unrest. In the early days of colonial rule, the colonial government showed little interest in assimilating the local Hong Kong population. Consequently, Hong Kong under British rule was often taken for granted as a quote-unquote Chinese society. In other words, the ethnic Chinese majority in the population is a major reason for the perceived Chineseness of Hong Kong identity. A local sense of being Hong Konger gradually developed in the 1970s as a result of the colonial government's reforms to address the disturbances in the 1966 and 1967, which revealed the PRC's influence in colonial Hong Kong. The research of sociologists Lau Shiu-kai and Quan Xin-ji suggests that modernization and financialization under British colonial rule led Hong Kong Chinese to see themselves as a distinctive ethnic group of Chinese, different from those in the PRC. Subsequent discussions of Hong Kong's identity have primarily centered on its relationship with the PRC. As anthropologist Gordon Matthews summarized, that is the struggle between being a part of China and also apart from China. Such anxieties have been reflected in local television and music productions, encapsulating a famous observation by post-colonial scholar Ray Chow that Hong Kong has been between the colonizers, that is, the UK and the PRC. The struggle about Hong Kong identity continued when Hong Kong's sovereignty was transferred from Britain to the PRC on the 1st of July 1997. The rhetoric China-Hong Kong integration was repeatedly used by the PRC and the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region government to promote Hong Kong's integration into the PRC, not only economically, but also politically and culturally. This push for Sinicization raised widespread concerns that the liberal, democratic values of Hong Kong would be forced to align with an authoritarian regime. Since 1997, the former Hong Kong University Public Opinion Program and the subsequent Hong Kong Public Opinion Research Institute have annually conducted research using representative samples about Hong Kongers' self-identification. Identity categories such as Hong Konger, Chinese, Chinese in Hong Kong, Hong Konger in China were provided as options. Over the years, respondents' identifications as Chinese peaked before the Beijing Olympics, but sharply declined afterwards, influenced by scandals such as the tainted formula milk powder in China and other negative impacts of economic integration on the local community. The direct impetus for the British government's BNO visa scheme for Hong Kongers was the Anti-Extradition Law Amendment Bill's protest from 2019 to 2020, also known as the anti-ELAP movement. This series of protests was a strong opposition to the Hong Kong government's proposal to amend the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance, which would allow extradition to the PRC. There was widespread fear that this amendment would severely undermine Hong Kong judicial independence, which is guaranteed by the mini constitution, the Basic Law, and any Hong Kongers could be sent to the PRC for trial. The anti-ELAP movement became the largest series of protests in Hong Kong's history, with an estimated 2 million people taking to the streets. The movement was met with a violent crackdown. Tear gas, rubber bullets, and other weapons were used to suppress the protests, and a number of protesters were found missing and later dead. The movement was followed by the enactment of the Hong Kong National Security Law, which extends extraterritorial powers beyond Hong Kong, exposing any individuals, regardless of their nationality, to the risk of transnational repression. In the aftermath of these events, the identification of Hong Kongers as the category of Chinese dropped to its lowest level since 1997, with only around 10% of the population. In contrast, approximately 75% of young people aged 18 to 29 identified themselves as Hong Konger. It is under these circumstances that more and more Hong Kongers consider emigrating due to the fear of the loss of freedom. It should also be noted that such data are no longer publicly available online. due to the implementation of the Hong Kong National Security Law, where the Hong Kong Public Opinion Research Institute have decided to withdraw these data from the public online. In a 2023 journal article titled Hong Kongers and the Coloniality of British Citizenship from Decolonization to Global Britain, sociologist Nicola Benson argued that the Hong Kong BNO visa represents the latest chapter in Britain's relationship with the people of Hong Kong, the Britain's last colony. In the article, she traced the history of the British National Overseas BNO status of Hong Kongers. To summarize briefly, the British government refused to grant Hong Kongers the right to abode in the UK due to concerns about uncontrollable migration from the city before 1997. As Benson wrote, the BNO visa gave those eligible a passport, but made clear that they had no right to abode in the UK, leaving them subject to British immigration control should they seek residence and employment there. It offered them access to British consular assistance when travelling to a third country, that is, not China or Hong Kong. As it was a closed, non-transferable category, it was anticipated that Britain's obligations to the region's residents would gradually die out. And the BNO passport, the BNO status, it was deliberately ambiguous by design. Ethnic Chinese Hong Kongers would become Chinese nationals after 1997 and could retain British nationality without the right of abode, only if they had registered for BNO status before the sovereignty handover. The BNO passport allowed for international travel, but holders were restricted from British consular protection within Hong Kong or any other part of the Chinese territory. Hence, many Hong Kongers regarded BNO primarily as a travel document in the past. The Tiananmen Square massacre in June 1989 deeply shocked many in the world, including the people in Hong Kong, leading to widespread anxiety about the city's future again, as people express themselves through massive protests. However, the British government only introduced the British Nationality Hong Kong Act in 1990 as a concession, offering full British citizenship with the right of abode in Britain through a points-based system for up to 50,000 Hong Kong citizens out of a population of around 2.6 million. Consequently, only a small number of Hong Kongers and their families obtained full British citizenship status before 1997. Due to the brutal crackdown of the anti-elect movement in Hong Kong and the subsequent implementation of the Hong Kong National Security Law, the UK government launched the Hong Kong British National Overseas Visa, which is known as the BNO visa, on 31st January 2021. Initially, this visa was not accessible to those born after 1997 because they couldn't register for the BNO status after the handover of sovereignty. However, subsequent changes relaxed this condition, and in the autumn of 2023, the scheme was extended to allow those with one BNO parent to apply for the visa in their own right. By the end of September 2023, 184,700 visas were granted to Hong Kongers already in the UK and those newly arriving. It is true that the majority of the Hong Kong population is ethnically Chinese. However, in this new wave of emigration, which has led to Hong Kong's most significant population decline since data was first recorded in 1961, differs from the previous waves of emigration in the 1980s and 90s. Many of the Hong Kongers who have emigrated since 2019, whether through BNO visa or other immigration route, they identify themselves as Hong Kongers, consistent with the results of the Hong Kong Public Opinion poll mentioned earlier. Political scientist Brian Vaughan argues that, in the emigration wave of the 80s and 90s, the previous wave, many overseas Hong Kongers chose to adapt to the new environment in foreign countries by settling in cities with large ethnic Chinese communities. Therefore, large communities of Hong Kong migrants were found across many global North countries, though it had immersed itself within a larger pan-ethnic Chinese diaspora community, instead of singling itself out as a separate Hong Kong diaspora. Hence, it would be important to study the mobility and lived experience of Hong Kong diaspora in this new culture of migration after 2019. So, who are the Hong Kongers who arrived at the UK after the launch of the BNO visa? By mid-2023, over 150,000 Hong Kongers had entered the UK on this visa, and this figure does not include Hong Kongers who have British citizenship. This made Hong Kongers the largest migrant group that arrived in the UK after Brexit to date. According to a 2023 report published by the Welcoming Committee for Hong Kongers, the majority of Hong Kongers entering the UK via BNO visa are aged between 25 and 64, and they are more highly educated than the average person in both Hong Kong and the UK. They are also overrepresented in professional occupational groups. Near 60% of them hold a degree at the graduate or postgraduate levels, compared to just over a third of the UK population as a whole. In terms of geographical distribution of Hong Kongers, Hong Konger organization Hong Kongers in Britain had done a research about Hong Kongers' preferred locations, and it turns out that Greater London and Manchester are the most popular due to job opportunities, and other cities in England, such as Nottingham, Birmingham, Reading, and Bristol, were also considered as ideal, desirable destination by the Hong Kongers entering via BNO visa. As a relatively recent migrant community in the UK, Hong Kongers, including those who arrived through the BNO visa and those who arrived before it, have organized a variety of social and cultural events alongside political rallies. These initiatives aim to support the growing Hong Kong community in the UK and preserve Hong Kong's culture and language, which is Cantonese. Examples of these events include rallies on anniversaries of the anti-elect movement, setting up community interest companies, CIC, and charitable incorporated organizations, CIOs, in different areas, and hosting arts and cultural events such as film festivals, community film screenings, and exhibitions highlighting Hong Kongers' fight for freedom, among other activities. There are also campaigns fighting for equal rights of BNO visa, such as campaigning for children of BNO visa holders to pay university home fee instead of the international fee. One notable aspect is that many of these new organizations, instead of aligning themselves with the pan-ethnic Chinese community in the UK, tend to position themselves within the broader British ESEA community. For instance, they celebrate the Lunar New Year rather than the quote-unquote Chinese New Year, demonopolizing the hegemony of Chineseness and emphasizing the connection and shared heritage with other ESEA communities such as the Vietnamese, Taiwanese, Korean, and other Sinophone diasporic communities who would also celebrate the occasion. Additionally, Hong Kong organizations also raise funds to support Ukrainians, showcasing their commitment to broader solidarity against authoritarianism. Many Hong Kongers came to the UK after 2019 due to feeling unsafe in Hong Kong. They face different challenges in the UK, for example, employment, housing, and mental well-being, etc. However, there is one particular issue that really raised concerns and anxiety among the community, that is related to transnational repression. Instances have been reported where Hong Kongers exercising their rights to freedom of expression in the UK were physically attacked by pro-PRC individuals or groups, or even by staff members of the Chinese embassy. In 2024, an espionage case involving an ex-Hong Kong policeman employed by the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office in London, along with British citizens, raised widespread concerns about PRC's government's reach to Hong Kongers in the UK, suggesting the high possibility of transnational repression. This high-profile spy case echoes a report published in The Guardian in late 2023, where many Hong Kongers expressed feeling unsafe on UK soil. These instances underscore the urgent need for discussions within the British ESEA community about geopolitics, safety, internal tensions, alongside other important issues such as building cross-group solidarity and combating stereotypes and racism. To conclude, with changing geopolitical tensions, A lot of Hongkongers have chosen to make a new home in the UK, their former coloniser, making them the largest group of migrants arriving at the UK after Brexit. In doing so, some of them opt not to align themselves with the pan-ethnic Chinese community here for various reasons, and instead they position themselves within the broader British ESEA community. Their insistence on preserving Cantonese language and commemorating Hongkongers' fight for democracy are just a few examples. As Hongkongers continue to settle in the UK, it becomes increasingly important to observe how this group of relatively skilled and affluent migrants participate in and contribute to the diverse British ESEA community. You can find the sources referenced in this video here. Please pause if you want to look them up in detail. Thank you.